People don't have anything to say to you really. They just want to greet and talk about,
How are you been? How are you doing? How have you been on this time? Da da da.
like it's the same script. So once you've memorized that script, you're fine. I wanted to talk about face blindness, which is also called prosopagnosia, and my personal experience with it. Face blindness is something that, from what I've learned recently, something that affects a lot of neurodivergent people, but sometimes affects people who are not neurodivergent. And this is something that I've dealt with my entire life. It never really seemed to me as something that other people did not experience, at least not at first, until later on when certain things started happening and it caused me some distress. Some, it caused people to get irritated with me. Let's just put it that way. And that was when it started becoming a thing. Before that, I never really thought of it as a thing. I just thought everybody was like that. And it, just from the name, face blindness or prosopagnosia is something that, for me, the way I experience it is that I am not able to recognize faces of people, and sometimes I can see someone's face multiple times on multiple different occasions, and I still would not be able to recognize them the next time I saw them. And if I wanted to recognize somebody's face, I would have to make a conscious effort to learn that person's face, the person's looks, and I would also use some other features of theirs to learn what they look like maybe the hair, or maybe the way the eyes look, or maybe some sort of features, as well as maybe their mannerisms, the way they move, etc. And then I would look at them over time, maybe with repeated exposure, so that I would be able to then get used to the face and learn the face. It's basically an inability to recognize faces or to remember faces. That's the way I experience it. I remember when I first entered university in my first year, I met this person who had gone to the same secondary school as I went to, and I did not know at first, but he recognized me and said, I'm this person. We attended the same secondary school, and they were about a year, about 3 years ahead of me in secondary school. Okay, so they introduced themselves to me, and that was okay. The next time we met, I did not know this person, and then they had to come to me and said, "You don't recognize me." At first, they greeted me, and I greeted them like the way I would greet normal people, and they said, "You don't recognize me, right?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't." And then they were like, "I was one who introduced myself the other day. Remember, we went to the same secondary school." I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry about that." The second time we met, and I just walked by as if I did not know him. I did not. And then they called me back and they were like, "You don't recognize me. I introduced myself to you the other day and I reminded you the last time we met and you still don't remember me." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking in your direction." A third time we met and I still did not recognize this person. I genuinely did not recognize this person. And then you could see the irritation and you could hear it in the way they spoke to me. Like,
Are you serious? Like, how many times do I have to introduce myself to you before you begin to recognize me?
I think the way they spoke, they took it as though I was deliberately being, like I was giving them attitude, or like I was deliberately not wanting to maybe interact with them for whatever reason. I don't know what they came up with in their heads, because I've realized that many times people seem to read my actions. And I know this isn't just me. Before I thought it was just me and it used to cause me a lot of pain. But now I know it's not just me because I've heard from a lot of neuroatypical people and they experience something similar. They see my actions that they do not understand, and somehow something makes them read those actions in the worst possible light. I don't understand it. I genuinely do. I can only think it might have to do with something, like something that has to do with them. I don't know. Like it's a thing that they have, and maybe they deal with a lot of negativity, or they just like negativity, or they struggle with negativity in some way, and so that makes them interpret actions that they do not understand in in just a negative light, and they would pick the most negative reason, like the worst possible reason for an action that I might have performed that they do not understand. And I'm saying this because I don't do that, right? Like I don't do that. When somebody behaves in a way that I don't understand, I always look for an excuse for them. And I look for the most innocent excuses, like, oh, maybe they did not know, maybe they did not see me, or I'll just look for, that's what I do, that's just the way I am. So it used to make me very, very sad, especially when it comes from people who you think are close to you and they're supposed to know you. Now it doesn't bother me anymore because I'm already kind of used to it. But at the same time, you don't really get used to stuff like that, right? Like you wish things people did not think like that. So maybe I can only assume maybe they thought I deliberately was trying to ignore them because I did not want to interact with them or mix with them, or maybe I was looking down on them or something from the way this person spoke to me, and I had to apologize. And so because of that encounter, because it was very embarrassing for me, and because he created a mini scene, I wasn't the only person there. I was with a friend. Um, I had to really take my time to look at their face and learn their face, and that was how I actually was able to recognize them the next time. A another incident that I remember that was a lot more, not just embarrassing, it was humiliating for me. It was very humiliating. It was very painful for me. Was when I was about 10 years old. I was about 10 years old. I had just entered secondary school. I went to a staff room where teachers, some teachers, um, stay, staff room. Um, and one of them sent me on an errand. I can't remember what the errand was. I think the man sent me to go and buy something. Okay. So I went to buy the thing. I came back to the staff room. First of all, even finding the staff room was trouble for me, because another thing that I deal with, that I've always dealt with, is finding directions. I cannot tell. Sometimes I like, how can I put this? I could get lost in a circle if care is not taken. I deal with that, but that's, it's just for another day. So anyway, I was able to find my way back to the staff room. I went there and then I saw a bunch of men, and I could not tell who had sent me on the errand. And I looked, and I just, something told me to just go to the first person that my mind went to. I just went in that person's direction. And I was like, "Excuse me, sir, this is what you sent me to buy." And he was like,
Was I the one who sent you? I did not send you to buy anything.
and I was already anxious before I approached him because I knew I did not know who sent me. So that already created anxiety for me. And so I just said, oh, I was going to just brave my way to go over to them and talk to them. And in addition to my anxiety due to not knowing who sent me, I was already tense because whenever I have to deal with people, especially people who are older, I always have this tension. I always feel tense, even up till now. Coupled with the fact that back then I also had an intense fear of authority figures. So you can imagine just how much I was struggling at that point. And so when he said that, I just felt even more troubled. And so I turned around and I looked, and I did not know who to go and meet, because all of them were looking at me by this point. And then I went to the next person, and they started saying,
Oh, so you don't know who sent you? You can't tell the person who sent you.
in a mocking kind of tone. And I did not respond to that. I just went to the person, like the second person who I could see who was beside him. Because something my man had told me, it was either the first person I went to or the second person who I was about to go and meet. And so I went to him and I was like, "Sir, this is what you sent me to get." And he was like, "Are you sure I was the one who sent you? Did I send you anything? You can't tell who sent you. And why don't you go back to the first person? He was the one who sent you." And so I had to go back to the first person because I thought he was serious. I could not tell if he was making a joke or if he was actually serious. So I went back to the first person and I was like, "No, I did not send you. Go to the second person." And so at that point, it was obvious that they were just having fun with me. Um, and I was struggling so hard. I felt very humiliated. I wanted to cry. I wanted so hard to cry. Like I had this strong urge to cry. But I also knew, like at that point in my life, I'd already known that one of the worst things you could do if people are mocking you is to cry because you're really giving them what they want. At least even if I could not tell certain things in certain social situations, even if I was really bad at social interactions, that was one of the things I had already learned. When people are mocking you or they're trying to have fun with you in that way, one of the worst things you could do is actually cry, okay? Because you are giving them more fuel, more ammunition, so to speak. So I resisted that urge to cry. At that point, I just stood there and I said nothing. I was just staring. And I couldn't even say anything really. Um, and then somebody, like one of the women in the staff room, was like, "This is the person who sent you," and she pointed at one of the men who was having fun with me. And so I went to him and I gave him the stuff, and we were laughing, and then I left. And it's crazy the things you remember. It's really crazy the things you remember because that was about 2 decades ago, and I still remember clearly. But not so clearly because some of the details are fuzzy. But I still remember that, and I still remember the trauma from that. Low key, in fact, not low key. I just want to put this out there. If you're thinking of one of the places where people who are neurodivergent get traumatized the most, it's in the schooling system. It's in schools, especially if it's a school on this awesome continent called Africa, and with our cultural baggage and things like that. Yeah, you can definitely expect a lot of trauma from schools. Okay, and I remember that very clearly, and I just wanted to highlight that as one of the sad experiences that dealing with face blindness has made me on the go. And I imagine that some other people might have worse experiences, and it has never gone away. And it was experiences like that, and the first experience I mentioned, that let it really sink in that it was a thing, that my being unable to remember faces was a thing, is a thing with me. Coupled with when some other people would say that if they see a face once, they will never forget that face. Um, and they demonstrate that. Like my mother sees a face one time and she never forgets the face. Like she never forgets that face. So it's not like it's something that people just say. I can see demonstrated. And I'm the very opposite when it comes to that. I see a face 1,000 times and I still forget that face, except when I make a conscious effort to look at that face and remember that face. So I have to memorize certain things about the face. And sometimes I still get it wrong. And of course, by making that extra effort, it's taking a lot of energy from me. Unlike maybe in some cases where other people who don't have that problem just see a face without conscious effort, they just see it and they picture the face and they never forget that face. Right. So it's just one of those things that could cause awkwardness in social situations, and definitely has caused awkwardness in social situations for me. And I have lots of other experiences besides the ones I mentioned. and it can just add to the difficulty that you already have, that I already have as a neurodivergent person with social situations. I don't know what to do in social situations instinctively anyway. And in any social situation, I'm number one, I'm always tense. There's something that goes tense inside me whenever I have to see somebody. When I realized that I actually have that thing, especially back when I was masking heavily, one of the things I used to do, in fact, the main thing I used to do, especially back when I was in school, was that whenever anyone would say hi to me in a way that seemed like they were familiar with me and I did not recognize them, then I would greet them as if I knew them. Like somebody would come and say, "Oh, Zane, hi." And I was like, "Oh my God, hi, how are you? It's been a long time." I don't recognize them. And we would greet, and then just to avoid that awkwardness and just to avoid that whole scenario of them saying, "Oh, you don't recognize me," or having to reintroduce themselves, or me having to admit that I don't recognize them, and then it becomes a whole thing, especially because I did not want to ever offend somebody in the way that I seem to be offending people when I don't recognize them. um so I would greet them in a very familiar way, and people were none the wiser. Most times people would not know that I did not recognize them. We just greet and we'd say, whatever. And most times people don't have anything to say to you really. They just want to greet and talk about, how are you being, how are you doing, how have you been, longest time, da da da. Like it's the same script. So once you've memorized that script, you're fine most times. And then you can go your separate ways and you'll just move along. And I remember one time I was with some of my friends and we were going somewhere, and there was this girl that came along and she greeted me that way, and I responded. I was like, "Oh my God!" And then we hugged, and then she went on her way. And one of my friends turned to me and was like, "How do you know her?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know her. To be honest, I genuinely do not know her." So yeah, that was, I want to say that was fake, but I am in a place where I'm learning to forgive myself for all the fakeness I've exhibited in the past. I'm working on forgiving myself. So, yeah, it was fake, but not in a bad way, because I was trying to cope. I did not know any better, and I was going through something. So it's not an excuse, it's a reason, and I am learning to forgive myself. So I forgive myself for being fake in that way and in many other ways that I have been fake when I was masking, because that was the only way I knew to survive in a world that makes very little sense to me most of the time. If you're experiencing something like that, you're not the only one. And uh well, there's somebody here who feels your pain. I would love to be able to share a coping mechanism that I have, or something that alleviates that thing, that makes it easier on you. But I genuinely, genuinely do not know of anything that could make it easier on you. If I knew, I would apply it in my own life. I apologize a lot. Okay, I apologize a lot. And I'm fine with that. I still don't look at people's faces all that much. I mean, I look at people's faces when I talk to them. So many times people don't know I'm not actually making eye contact, because I look at their mouths. I look at their mouths. I've noticed that's actually what some people look at people's ears, some people look at people's hair, nose, some feature. Some people look like right beside them. They look at what's behind them. So people like that don't know that you're not making eye contact with them. They think you're fine, but you're looking at them, but you're not actually looking at them. So I look at people's mouths, and that's what I focus on. So I don't look at the whole face, and I think that's part of what contributes to me not being able to capture the face. So if I know that this is somebody I'm meeting for the first time, if I know it's somebody I have to like learn what they look like maybe in a work setting or in school or etc., then I try to remind myself of that. When I remember to do so, I try to remind myself of that, and then I look at their face at least for a few seconds, so that it will get me in that frame of mind that I have to learn what they look like for future purposes.